So our final speaker for the morning is Neil Leitch, and I am really delighted that you've come to speak to us. I was actually really surprised that you said yes. So I'm quite apprehensive. I don't know what you're going to talk about. So Neil is the CEO of the largest early years membership organisation, and your focus really is on childcare. And I think it's fantastic that you've come to speak to us, because there has been a kind of gulf, hasn't there, between mothers and the childcare, as in those mothers who want to be more at home and those mothers who use childcare. And one of the things I really wanted to do when I became chair is to try and bridge that gap, because we're not on opposing camps. We're very much we're here to support each other, really, and to make the choices that are right for the family. But it'd be very interesting to hear what you've got to say. I know that we were very moved, and Angela and Anna particularly, they came you gave a very personal story at the Labour Party conference, and that was really moving, about your relationship with your own mother. You were in care, and how important that was. And I think a couple of things are really important. I think we talk about the disadvantaged family and the distrust of parents. But I think the relationship with a mother and child is so important, and particularly if you're disadvantaged or if there's problems. And I think that support needs to be there, whatever background you come from. And that relationship is so important, whatever your background. Anyway, really delighted that you're here, and over to you.
Thank you. Be gentle, be kind with me, okay? Always. Who said always? I was actually going to start today with a slide that was a headline in the Telegraph, in fact, in March of this year. And I thought, I won't, because it's probably a little bit too negative. And that headline was that we were voted the second most miserable country in the world back in March of this year. And actually it would have been quite comfortable putting that slide up, I think, today, because certainly some of the things that we've heard are quite depressing, to say the least. And the direction of travel has to change, otherwise I think we have got some major challenges ahead. I should probably just say at the outset that I am not an academic. I have no early years qualifications whatsoever. My background was finance. I used to work with First National Bank, and I chaired the Finance Industry Standards Association. And I tell people that around 20 odd years ago, I developed a moral compass, and I decided to get out of banking. And my second week of thinking that I might have a more comfortable life, I decided to volunteer for what was then the Preschool Learning Alliance. And I will tell you, thinking that I might take early-ish retirement, I work harder now than I've ever worked in my life. So be gentle with me today. I was mentioning to a colleague, not somebody I work with, but just a general colleague, that I was coming here today, and they said, well, why the hell would you want to do this? Somebody who represents 14,000 nurseries, preschools, some childminders and baby and toddler groups. And it's a perfectly reasonable question, as I discovered. And I was thinking to myself, that's probably, though, because you don't understand our values, the Early Years Alliance's values, and our mission statement, and our vision. And so I'd like to think that, as I say, by the end of this, you will be gentle, you'll have nicer thoughts about the early years sector, and particularly the Early Years Alliance. So let me just tell you a little bit about the Alliance. First of all, as I've said, we are the largest membership organisation in England, 14,000 nurseries, as I've alluded to. The one thing I would say that makes us different from other organisations is that we also operate 40 settings ourselves, exclusively in areas of deprivation. Well, you can imagine that we have quite a few vulnerable families and vulnerable children. In fact, we have 3 times the national average of children on pupil premium, on care plans, at risk, you name it. We have it within our settings. And it's interesting that this time, 5 years ago, we operated 132. We're not for profit, we're a charitable organisation. Today we only operate 40. So I'd like to think, actually, that we understand the challenges, not just of the early years sector, but the challenges of many parents and many families. What I would say is this organisation was never established to be a trade association or to be an organisation that promoted private equity, growth, etc., etc. It was started by a woman, a single woman, a lonely woman living in London. If I could have the next slide, please. And I was fortunate enough a few years back to be able to visit the home of the original founder, Belle Toutave. And Belle was sitting in a lounge telling me the story of how the Alliance basically started. And she tells a story of being a single mum, as I say, in a London flat. And it was her daughter Mary's birthday. Mary's there. Third birthday. She had no friends, no children to play with. And she wanted to have a little birthday party, but as I say, had nobody to invite. And she said that she would look out of her kitchen window and she would see this warm-faced lady walk past every day with her little girl. And so, close to Mary's birthday, she plucked up the courage, ran down the stairs, tapped the woman on the back and said, "Any chance that you and your daughter would come to my daughter's birthday party?" They got together. Very quickly, they realised that there might be some other lonely, predominantly mums, who wanted to do something similar. And that was the start of an organisation that led to around 23,000 playgroups in this country. But I'm pretty sure, when I was speaking to Belle, that she made a direct focus on mums and parents. And she said this, if I could have the next slide, please. Our role is to support parents, not replace them. And that is the vision of the Alliance. We firmly believe that parents are the first and foremost educators of their children. And I wanted to just share with you, it's a slightly tenuous link really, but it indulge me, and it will link at some point back to the importance of mothers and people that care and educate children. So first of all, a question. Hands up if you have a pet. Quite a few. Well, in all my adult life, I have to tell you, we've never had a pet. And I would describe myself as not really being an animal lover. I detest cruelty to animals. If you're going to have an animal, you look after it, you care for it. But I never really had the desire. And just before lockdown, we moved home and we had a little bit more space. And my family convinced me, yeah, you know what's coming, don't you? My family convinced me that we should get a dog. And all my arguments, who's going to walk it, who's going to feed it, and they were going to do everything. Of course they were. And I succumbed, basically, to that desire. And so if I can have the next slide, please. Okay. And this is Sebastian when he's naughty. When he arrived with us within the first few weeks, and if I could have the next slide, please. And this is Seb now. And he probably looks a little bit fearsome, 67 kilos. But I will tell you, he is the most loving, thoughtful dog, animal that I could ever wish for. And I really struggle. He's the only person when I come home in the evening and we've had a rotten Ofsted inspection or we've had whatever it happens to be, a DFE meeting that hasn't gone well, he's the only person that I can talk to and he never complains about a single thing. In fact, I'm at a point now when I walk up the drive, I talk to myself and I say, make sure you give Michelle a cuddle before you reach for that dog. So that's how it's sort of developed. But it's a long-winded way of telling you I like dogs, isn't it? But okay. But I wanted to share with you a story. I think it was early last year, a true story that hit the BBC website and other websites. If I could have the next slide, please. Don't worry. And it's a story of a dog, a little boy, and a vet. And so I don't get this wrong. I wanted to read you verbatim what the vet said. He said, being a vet, I'd been called to examine a 10-year-old Irish wolfhound named Belka. I know that's not an Irish wolfhound. The dog's owners, Ron, his wife, Lisa, and their little boy, Shane, were all very attached to Belka, and they were hoping for a miracle. I examined Belka and found he was dying of cancer. I told the family we couldn't do anything for him and offered to perform the euthanasia procedure for the old dog in their home. As we made arrangements, Ron and Lisa told me they thought it would be good for Shane to observe the procedure. They felt as though Shane might learn something from the experience. The next day, I felt a familiar catch in my throat as Belka's family surrounded him. Shane seemed so calm, petting the old dog for the last time, that I wondered if he understood what was going on. Within a few minutes, Belka slipped away peacefully. The little boy seemed to accept Belka's transition without any difficulty or confusion. We sat together for a while after Belka's death, wondering aloud about the sad fact that animals' lives are shorter than humans' lives. Shane, who had been listening quietly, piped up and said, I know why. Startled, we all turned to him, and what came out of his mouth next stunned me. I'd never heard a more comforting explanation. He said, if I could have the next slide, please. People are born so that they can learn how to live a good life, like loving everybody all the time and being nice. Well, dogs already know how to do that, so they don't have to stay as long. And I don't have to explain to you the part that you play in shaping that agenda for our youngest children. And for me, it's personal. And I probably get, and you've alluded to it, I think, Anne, that it was the reason that I was possibly invited. It's personal because what we do in the early years is absolutely critical. So if I could have the next slide, please. This is the only picture I have of my family. I'm one of 6 children. I know there are only 5 there. My younger brother, I'd love to say it was me, back in 1954. That's me in the middle. And before you say it, I know the hairstyle hasn't changed, okay? In fact, it's a bit worrying that there's a bit more hair there than there is now at this point in time. But regardless, you look at that picture, and I tended to think, doesn't that look a reasonably happy family? But the reality is you could not be further from the truth. My mother, at the age of 16, she was born in Lucknow in India, and she married a soldier and who was stationed there, came back to Greenock, which is just outside of Glasgow. And my father was an alcoholic and an awful wife abuser. Awful things to my mother, burnt her with an iron, all sorts of things. As a result of that, we ran away to London. He followed us, etc., all 6 of us. And we were all put into care. And I still feel guilty about the fact that of the 6 children, I was the only child. I fretted, I cried, I was incredibly distressed. And despite the risk that the equivalent of social services had in those days, they allowed me to come back out and be with my mother. And I know beyond a shadow of doubt that being with my mother helped shape my life. It is really interesting that my 3 older siblings, who were all exposed to much more of my father's violence, away from my mother for considerably longer, all died of drug and alcohol abuse. So the whole, I guess, pretext of we are in danger of being products of our environment, for me, holds true. If I could have the next slide, please. Aaron Antonovsky was an American sociologist working in Scotland, interestingly, in the mid-60s. And he looked at attachment, and he asked himself the question. He wanted to understand why it was, or how people had basically, what their experiences were throughout the Holocaust. What happened to the children that had gone into concentration camps further down the line in terms of their life? And they, of course, would have experienced some horrendous things, many watching their parents executed effectively. And he discovered, so if I could have the next slide, please, that 70% of those survivors had mental health issues, social issues, etc., and unsurprisingly, that was the case. But he was more interested in the 30% that had managed to cope with life. And he termed it as a sense of coherence. He said that they had a structured, predictable, and explicable life, not provided by the state, but provided by their parents, their families. Attachment, as I say, is absolutely critical. I just wanted to share with you a video that I think demonstrates attachment in practice, full stop. So if I could just have the next slide, please.
Every time I say to you, it's time for bed, you kick off.
I'll be good now.
You said you was going to be good for me.
Bye-bye.
So, shall we go to bed?
Yeah.
No? Oh, okay.
I'll go to
Do you want to watch Iggle Piggle for a bit?
I'm going to go to
Iggle Piggle. Are you trying to say Iggle Piggle?
I'm going to say
You're arguing, but you've just went to laugh. Didn't you?
I'm going to go to
Are you being a cheeky girl?
Okay.
Don't know. You're not getting off the bed.
Da.
No, you're not getting off the bed.
I'm sitting well.
You're not getting off.
Ah.
Oh,
I'm going to shut
Are you-
Daddy.
okay. Oh, really?
I'm going to bed.
Oh, right. Are you tired?
I'm going to shower.
Oh, you're not tired?
I'm going to shower.
Do you want to go to sleep?
No.
No, okay. Why don't you ever want to go to sleep?
I'm going to
You've got energy. I've
I've
got your bottle, I've got your teddy, and then you started kicking off.
I'm going to go.
I changed your bum.
I'm going to come home.
I know, but I thought that's what you wanted to do.
Let's go come out.
I know, but we've had a nice day together, and then you're kicking off now.
I'm going to show you.
But why?
I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
I could watch that for hours, couldn't you? It's just, nobody tell me that parents do not have a fundamental role in educating, support. That child is learning. They may not have words, but the whole interaction of development is clearly there. I just wanted to show you another video, which is, again, emphasizes the importance. It's slightly negative, but it emphasizes the important role that we have as parents in supporting and educating our children. And it's a little boy, and it was an experiment in America, basically, or some research, I should say, in America. It's a little boy, 15 months old, who was given a toy, and you can see how he reacts, etc. And then someone comes into the room who's rather aggressive. And this appeals to me, obviously, from domestic abuse sort of background with my family. And you'll see how it differs, which for me, again, emphasizes the important role that we have in making sure the experiences of our youngest children are really positive. So if I could have the next video, which will be quicker, I'm hoping, this one, yeah?
There's something inside. Can you see what's inside the box? You can take the lid off. Is there something in there? There's a green cone. You want to put it back inside of the box? And put the lid back on the box? And close it up? Can I see that? Thank you. Let's see what else we have. Look at this. See? Look at this. There.
Hi, Teresa. I'm going to sit here and read a magazine.
Okay. That's Kelly. Kelly's going to sit and read a magazine. Kelly, look at this.
That's aggravating. That's so annoying.
Oh, I thought it was really interesting.
Well, that's just your opinion. It's aggravating.
Here. Can I see that? Thank you.
I'm going to go now, Teresa.
Kelly's going bye-bye. Kelly went bye-bye.
It's quite disturbing, isn't it? It's quite disturbing. But it does emphasize, again, the experiences that we have. If I could have the next slide, please. I'm sure many of you will have seen this headline just a few weeks ago in the Times, where basically the original founder of Sure Start, Naomi Einstadt, was suggesting that it is not in the best interest of young children to be in early years settings. Full stop. And I understand that. But I would say this, just to give it some context, that we do not, and David and Ellie have alluded to this, we do not live in utopia. And just about every policy that has come out of the previous government, certainly, has been about getting mums back into the working environment. And we live in a financial state where it's almost impossible. When I was growing up, it was almost accepted that one person could go off to work, could earn an income, and the other, whether it be right or wrong, but at the time it was predominantly the female, was able to stay at home with children. That no longer exists. So we have what we have. And I would also say this, and I'm probably thinking about our own nurseries here. I've seen enough parents themselves who are desperate for respite, who need that additional support. And I've seen enough children come through our nursery. I was visiting a nursery one day and the manager said to me, "We love you coming out here, Neil, but why don't you come and work in one for 2 days?" Oh my God. I did it for 2 days. Well, I did it for the first day. I blocked the sink, 3.5 hours unblocking the sink. Second day, they let me go home early. But even then, I will tell you that if I worked in an earlier setting, I would swear a lot more, I would drink a lot more, and I would steal children who I felt had a lovely experience throughout the day, but we were sending them home to chaos. So I come back to the point, this is about everyone playing a part. It is interesting that in the last 10 years, I've met every early years minister, I have met every Secretary of State, I have actually met, with the exception of the Chancellor during Liz Truss's term of office. But did anyone? Every Chancellor. And I was giving a Radio 4 interview a few months ago, just pre-election actually, and I found myself saying, not once in that period has anyone said to me, "Neil, what do you think would be in the best interest of the child or the mother?" Never. I will tell you That was on a Sunday morning. 20 minutes later, I received an email from our fairly high-ranking DFE director who said, Neil, do you think we could meet so-and-so to tick the box predominantly? But that is the pressure that people are under. It is a back-to-work agenda and not much more. If I could have the next slide, please. And to illustrate that point, a few years ago, I was asked by I won't say who it is this time, I revealed that last time, but I was asked by the chair of a very large supermarket if I would come and speak at their annual conference. And I said, what about? He said, tell us how we can get more mums back into work, basically. And somehow I found myself saying, I'll do that, but let me talk, only if you let me talk to some of the mothers that have come back to work and those that were on maternity leave. And I did, and I'll never forget the number, 42 mothers I spoke to. And without exception, not a single mother wanted to go back to work in the time frame that they were given. I had many that were in tears who said to me they would come home in the evening, they would spend 1 hour with their child, usually at bath time. They would buy them more sweets, they would buy them more toys because they felt guilty, because they felt they'd missed their critical moments. If we are talking about attachment and developing young children, that cannot be right. So this is about fundamentally choice. Nearly there. I just wanted to sort of conclude with, again, another video. Are we okay to play another video? Or is it? Yeah, okay. He's rushing back in. Which relates to, some of you may have seen it, but it relates to school, basically. But again, I think it emphasizes the important role as educators, and I don't mean formal educators, carers and educators that we have. So, if it's at all possible to play that video.
Mr. Pigden, he wanted to teach, and he probably wanted to teach because he wanted to find a student that he could change their lives, and it was me. I was the guy. I can't even tell you, sometimes I think about him literally every day. He gave me some self-worth. He made me feel like I was important. I remember when I met him again, it was really strange.
Hello, Ian. Long time no see.
Mr. Pigden, you're alive.
I'm alive, he says. How are you doing?
I can't believe it. Someone said you was dead.
As you see, I'm very much in, and I'm so glad you've done so well with yourself.
I don't know what to say. God, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I don't know why I didn't tell Mr. Pigden about what was happening at home, but just having his encouragement really helped.
The reverse of that is that just before Christmas last year, I was fortunate enough to be invited by the Princess of Wales to speak alongside some speakers at a symposium that she held in London. And I was asked a question, which is, why do you do what you do? And my mind flicked back to, and it relates to this sort of video, really. And it's interesting that I can only remember the name of one teacher at school, and that was Mr. Fruin. And the reason I remember him will come clear in a minute. But when my mum managed to, because I feel like I wanted to end with just a tribute to my mum. When my mum finally got us back out of care, like many families of the day, we were pretty poor, to say the least. And my mum would get adult trousers and she would take them in and send me off to school. My mum, I've always said, was the most loving, dearing person in the world. She was the worst bloody seamstress you've ever come across, right? And I went off to school on this one particular day, and I had these really thick seams down the side of my trousers. And Mr. Fruin, my science teacher, pulled me out in front of class. And he said, "Leitch, you are a disgrace." And all my peers were looking at me, smiling and laughing. That was the day at the age of 14 that I decided, I left school at 14, that I decided to get the hell out of there. Best thing I ever did. But what it teaches me is that we, as educators, whether it be in earlier settings or as parents, have the power to shape or completely destroy the lives of children. My mum shaped my life, and she made me, I guess, prepared for some of the tough things in life further down the line. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Wow. Hello. Wow, Neil, that was just amazing, so moving, and my work is done. We have a new advocate. No, but thank you so much. That was, I suppose, the question really burning in my mind is how do we move from here to change policy, and really to be able to support children and to support the relationship between parent and child, and childcare settings are necessary as well. So how we can put forward a narrative which is supporting of both, and I suppose target the care for those who really need it, and use the money wisely and target it properly. Yeah, thank you. Have we got questions from the floor? Yes, one at the back.
Mine's just more of a comment, really. Talking about fiscal policy, etc. I've just been sort of thinking about other fiscal changes, like the raising of the retirement age. And it seems like the window where mothers could have several years to look after their own children, it's not been, they haven't sort of considered that if we're working till 67 or 70, those 5 years, the crucial 5 years, are a very small percentage. Even if you go to university at 20, you get a job at 21, you might not retire till 70. It's so mean-minded to sort of squash those years away, at a time when we're working longer than ever. And because of that as well, there's less informal grandparental care, because they're all grandmothers, having to work.
Thanks so much. It was a really moving, as Anne said, really moving presentation. And I'm firstly would say I'm very pleased that someone like you is heading up an organisation like yours. Picking up a little bit on the survey from the other half and the question about sample selection, anecdotally, certainly in circles I mix in, I know a number of people who don't need to take up the government childcare hours in terms of either they work flexibly, they work part-time, or they're not working. But they do because they think socially and culturally that is the right thing to do. And because it's a government and a fiscal policy, they believe that must be research-backed and it must be the right thing to do. And I wonder how you've given some great examples where clearly outsourcing early years care is so life-changing for children. But I think there are a number of other households where children do really well with their mothers, but their mothers don't think that is acceptable, and they therefore assume it would be better to send their children out into early years education. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
To take the point on, I guess, what can we be doing effectively to change the narrative? That is, I think if everybody puts the child, what's in the best interest of the child, and we follow that narrative, and everybody attempts to do it. And I'll just relay one sort of incident, which I think possibly answers the other question as well, and that is that I was asked by a journalist a little while ago what I thought a successful little child looked like when they left nursery, preschool, or a childminder. And I found myself saying that I don't care if they can recite the alphabet. I don't care if they can count to 100. I don't care if they can name 5 planets. Success to me is a child that is kind, empathetic, gentle, loving, the kind of person that will grow up to care for others and make others feel good. And without that, there is no point in creating the brightest sparks in the world if they do not hold kindness. And so for me, we need to shift that GDP, that financial challenge, because there is no point in having possessions if you have got a cruel, selfish population. And we are charged with creating future citizens, aren't we? And I suggest, and this is going to sound depressing, but if we are to have any hope of still being on this planet in 200 years' time, with everything that's gone on in the recent months, internationally or even in the UK, it will be the work that parents do in creating kind, loving people. I hope that sort of semi-answers it.
Just quickly. Thank you. And just also to follow your question, James Heckman will be joining us in the afternoon, and the Heckman curve has been used quite often to talk about investing in the early years has the biggest output, and the focus has been on childcare. But he's saying we've really missed this vital. He said that his work has been misused, and what's happening now is that middle class people are putting their children from what is very good childcare at home into not so good childcare because we haven't got the high quality childcare. So please address him later. Fingers crossed he should be there. So yes.
I've got two, Neil, if that's right. Keith Reid from the Parent Infant Foundation has joined us online. He says, does Neil think the government's policy on providing funding for childcare of 9-month-old babies is a good idea?
No comment. I think you prioritise where you get the biggest return on human capital investment. And that means that you prioritise for the most disadvantaged, vulnerable children where you can demonstrate, and the science demonstrates, that they are better off having support from an early years provider. I don't think it's an exact science, and I think everything I've said today is that parents should be at the heart. They are not, early years settings are not surrogate parents and should never be that full stop. So I don't think it's an exact science. I don't think I can give an exact answer, because I come back to the point. There are children that I have come across in our own settings who I know are better in our environment. And they may be literally 6 weeks old. But this is a general policy, and it's about getting mums back into work. And you have to ask the question, is that the right policy? I represent 14,000 nurseries, so they will vary. I think I ducked that reasonably well, didn't I?
One more from Anne-Marie. What 1 or 2 policies would Neil change or introduce to help make the difference we need?
I would improve maternity, paternity leave, full stop, and I would give parents the choice to be parents. I can't remember who it was that said it, but I think, Anne, you might have said it when you said obstacles. We are at a position, because of the economic drive to get mums back into the working environment, where children are being considered as obstacles rather than opportunities. That, again, cannot be right.
I have to say that in all the campaigning we do, it is the Treasury that we are facing. It's the language of the Treasury, the GDP and the obstacles, and it is Treasury language. And when I speak to people, it's very much, well, you try talking to the Treasury, because that's the way they view things, and the money comes from the Treasury. So we have to change the Treasury view. Yes.
Can I just add? I'll speak loudly. So Zoom can hear it, so you don't have to run. But that's fine if you look at it short term. But if you look more long term,
yes,
then the Treasury may be very,
yes,
very interesting.
Yes. Again, Heckman hopefully will cover this. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. This is a problem that the government see every. Oh, sorry.
18 billion pounds. 18 billion pounds is spent in remedial action. We spend more money trying to fix the problem rather than prevent it. So it's the whole James Heckman, dare I say, equation. Invest in the early years, you reap the benefits considerably later on. Higher taxpayers, lower health burden, lower crime burden. More importantly, and probably Sweden will tell you this, happier people. And that's just as important as anything. Who wants to be miserable with loads of money? Well, maybe some do, but...
Maybe just a bit of money. One more question.
I just wanted to observe that the Treasury makes decisions based on a 5-year electoral cycle. The £18 billion, or as the Princess of Wales's employer task force has identified, 40.5 billion annually that it costs. Those numbers are over a lifetime, and that's not an electoral cycle. So to me, the answer, in response to the question of what could you do differently, is that we have the government, we have the politicians, we have the policy that we deserve and that we vote for. The reason head teachers all care desperately about GCSE results is because parents do. And if teachers, if the number of GCSE results go down more than 5 percentage points, the head teacher's probably going to lose their job. How many politicians, how many MPs know even what the good level of development, what the school readiness numbers are in their local primary school? Probably none of them. And that's because it doesn't matter. That's not what their voters care about. That's not, we don't get on Question Time and demand to know why it is that government is so underinvesting in the early years proportionate to the rest of education. Because we're all too busy, demanding more Russell Group places for state school kids, or I don't know, whatever it is. So I think what we can do is what Mothers at Home Matter is doing, only on a grander scale, and that is make the voice heard and keep lobbying and get Neil in any of his 873 media appearances on a daily basis to keep saying, because everything he says about choice is of course right. Everything Naomi Eisenhat said about mothers are the best place for babies to be when they're little. I've just been sitting at the back. I can't tell you what a gorgeous morning I've had watching these mums of these babies. There's this one, honestly, his little face going like this, working away. Honestly, it's absolute joy. And that's, if we don't want a government that doesn't prioritise the early years, then we need to start saying so.